Today's episode, we are going to be discussing the lineup for VIVA Pomona Fest 2025 and its implications. This is All Gas, No Trash. My name's Adam, and welcome back to the program, and welcome to a brand new episode. Before we get underway, we do have to do the Game Rage No Curse Minute, where we kill the first 60 seconds of the program in order to play nice with the YouTube algorithm with no cursing, no swearing whatsoever. First, I want to give a quick thanks to everybody that has been listening on RSS, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or whatever digital streaming platform you've been listening. We appreciate it, and especially those that have been listening on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate all the subscriptions. Please continue to do that. Lastly, we have another episode for you next week where we will be talking about Scuzzlin's latest release on the way for you, and that'll be the Game Rage No Curse Minute. What is VIVA Pomona Fest, you might ask? It is a 2-day festival held at and around the Glass House in Pomona, California. And the reason that it is particularly interesting as a festival is because it is one of the venues that Golden Voice owns in addition to the Fox Theater. Well, amongst many venues that Golden Voice owns, the adjacent venue to the Glass House is the Fox Theater, which Golden Voice also owns. And as some of you may know, the promotion also runs Coachella, the music festival. So if you have paid attention to the bills, some of these bands end up playing Coachella, which is why this roster or lineup of bands is particularly interesting, because we could very well see some of these names featured at Coachella Music Festival. If you're looking for a prime example, look no further than Magdalena Bay playing at the 2021 edition of VIVA Pomona Fest, and this was followed with them playing at Coachella in 2024. If you want another example, well, let's talk about Julie, who played in the 2022 edition of VIVA Pomona Fest and is now going to play this year at Coachella. As you can see, there are implications for playing VIVA Pomona Fest, whether the person, Renee Contreras, who runs the event itself, does something about it, referring to the bands that play on the lineup, eventually moving on to playing Coachella, or Golden Voice themselves steps in and picks a few of the bands to eventually move on to Coachella. It could be one of two things. But in any case, we are talking about bands that could be headlining for the next 5 to 10 years that are going through this festival and potentially moving onwards to bigger things. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the lineup. There are only a few names I really want to concentrate on, so let's go ahead and do that. On Saturday, November 22nd, we have the Tulips, who are headlining in addition to 54 Ultra, and there's a list of a bunch of other bands, but let's just concentrate on the ones that matter. We have RIO KOSTA, Gelli Haha, the Silvertone, aka BK, amongst the names to be featured on day one of VIVA Pomona Fest. Where do I even start? Several months ago, I made an episode called The Latest on Gelli Haha, where I talked about my experience of seeing Gelli Haha perform at the Silver Lake Lounge with Chanpan, and I came away from the experience thinking that I had seen one of the best shows in 2025, and I think around the 31-minute mark, I say something along the lines of, I could see Gelli Haha performing at VIVA Pomona Fest because I thought it would be a good start for her to end up eventually at Coachella in roughly 3 years. And now, in hindsight of me mentioning Magdalena Bay and Julie playing at VIVA Pomona Fest and thereafter playing Coachella, it took about 3 years. Magdalena Bay performed at VIVA Pomona Fest in 2021 and then followed up with playing Coachella in 2024. Julie played in 2022 at VIVA Pomona Fest and then followed up with playing Coachella in 2025. So maybe we see Gelli Haha perform at Coachella in 2028. And aside from that, let's talk about RIO KOSTA, who's a band that we've been covering for the last several months. And we have a paper trail of episodes that we've made leading up to their debut album. And also we have their live performance at the Zebulon for their album release show that kicks so much ass. And it's a band that I thought was on to bigger and better things. And here they are in a situation that seems to indicate that. And the reason that I believe so, or why I thought so, is because they were signed to the TBA agency, which accounts for like 4% of the lineup at Coachella. And also the fact that they were signed to Vertigris, the record label / management, where a band like Jungle is featured. So that felt like a bit of validation or an indicator to suggest that RIO KOSTA was going to, I guess, explode or take off to some degree. And here we have the evidence of that. Let's talk about the Silvertone, somebody that I came in contact with during the pandemic roughly. Because of something I had written about the Altons, he reached out to me and I think we talked briefly. But the reason that this guy is particularly interesting is because last year when the Cathedral opened, which is a venue that Galo Galvan runs, who used to be the director of the Fox Theater, he had this guy before this place actually opened. He performed there, and I learned a bit more about him, but it is rather peculiar to see him perform at VIVA Pomona Fest because Gallo had a co-worker named Rachel Bowl that is now the director of the Fox Theater, and I know for a fact that both of them liked this dude and a few other bands. And the other band that I gotta mention is Rangoon, who is... This band is interesting because one of the members is named Diego, who's the guitar player that plays in a band called Archer O that both Gallo and Rachel love and have featured at the Fox Theater Pomona. And I think they played their album release show just a month or two. Well, I think it'd probably be safe to say it was closer to a handful of months ago. But yeah, I mean, I see how this lineup is being formed to some degree. And I mean, let's talk about aka BK, an artist that we talked about from the very beginning of her first release. And if you want proof of that, go to the Brain Story album review of Sounds Good. And within the first 15 minutes, you hear me talking about aka BK. And this is somebody that I came to find out was in the circle of makeout music in addition to Gelli Haha. So it just has me like thinking about a lot of things, whether this Rene Contreras guy saw what makeout music was doing, or perhaps they even talked between Jeffrey Bywater, who is the founder of Makeout Music, talking to Rene Contreras about music, running aka BK by him, or even Gelli Haha. But I guess what's worth mentioning too is that there was this festival called Community Service, which was a festival run by the Above the Bridge podcast that included Chicano Mosh, who's on the second day of Viva Pomona Fest, and they featured Jeffrey Bywater. So amongst Above the Bridge, Makeout Music, and Gallo and Rachel, I wonder if any of these people talked to Rene Contreras, or even Rene Contreras looked into some of the things that were being booked at the Cathedral or the Fox Theater or Makeout Music, because, I mean, these are things that I've been capturing or even talking about for the last year or perhaps even two. And I'm just very curious of how this bill came together, because it smells like certain people to me, or at least to me, it smells like certain people's curation. So let's quickly talk about day two, and there's only a few names that I want to cover, which again is Chicano Mosh, who we have seen perform at the Fox Theater for this community service festival that was promoted by Above the Bridge and also co-hosted by the Fox Theater. So you have previous things or previous events happening either at the Cathedral or even at the Fox Theater that have ended up at VIVA Pomona Fest. But aside from that, the other band that I wanted to specifically talk about is NIIS ending up at VIVA Pomona Fest, which again is a band that we've been covering for the last several months leading up to their debut album that came out. And we reviewed that album. We talked about the shows at the Casbah and also the Terragram Ballroom, which was the homecoming show. And I will not make it a secret that this is a band that I've been following probably since 2020, when they came out with their song called Egg, or it might have even been 2019. But this is a band that I've been following for a hot minute, and I'm glad to see that they ended up at VIVA Pomona Fest because I think they're very deserving. And if you haven't checked out the debut album from NIIS, which is Nice World, give it a listen because it is one of the best punk albums that you can listen to in 2025. But there you have it, man. We have so many great bands that are being featured at VIVA Pomona Fest that could spell better things for some of the bands that we have mentioned previously. Which ultimately brings me to my point. If you haven't been convinced that All Gas, No Trash isn't the cutting edge of music, look no further than this episode. Look no further than our podcast or our YouTube channel and see the paper trail and receipts for all the bands that are going to be featured at VIVA Pomona Fest. I have put my blood, sweat, and tears for the last 6 years covering local music and music around the world. I really tried to give it my all when it comes to this podcast. I do all the research myself, and I just wanted to create a platform to cover artists at the ground floor level because I don't think we should be sitting on our hands to do something about music. If there's an artist out there with a great song, why are we waiting till they hit a certain accolade or a certain benchmark to start talking about them? If they have great music, fucking do something about it. And that's what this podcast is to me. I want to cover music as it happens in real time. And I hope you've gotten that idea. And I hope you have found some type of value in listening to this podcast because it means something to me. And I hope it means something to you for those that listen. But anyways, I've been rambling for too long, and this is turned into something of a rant. But man, I'm really frustrated with my 6-year journey, and I'm hoping that this ultimately turns into something. But if it doesn't, I hope at the very least that I helped any amount of artists, or if not one artist, in their journey to going on to bigger and better things. But yeah, I'm going to end the episode here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you all next time.